So, how is the coronavirus relevant to environmental science? Funny you should ask. Well, this cute little guy right here is a pangolin, and the pangolin is thought to be an intermediate host of the SARS CoV 2, the new coronavirus. And as you can see here, the pangolin is a scaly anteater, and it is actually relevant to several topics that we've discussed throughout the course. Pangolins are an endangered species. There are several species of them, all of which are endangered, and they suffer from a number of different human impacts on their populations. Humans are clearing the habitats in which they live and encroaching upon the pangolins, and humans are also taking these from the wild as exotic pets and also for traditional Chinese medicine. And it is thought that the first human crossover of the coronavirus actually happened in a wild animal market in the Wuhan province, which is a place where pangolins are often traded and brought in on the black market to be sold. So remember from our discussion about biological hazards that some of the factors involved in infectious disease, emerging infectious disease, are going to be increasing encroachment of human populations into these wild habitats. And also, it mentioned that bringing wild animals into human settlements, whether it be for trade, whether it be for meat, or whatever the case may be, both of these are going to be major factors in spreading disease. Here is another example of how what we've learned in environmental science is relevant to the coronavirus and its epidemiology. It's spread throughout the world. This here shows you the age structure diagrams. Remember those? I'm sure you do. I bet you thought you had seen the last of these, but they are always relevant. So this shows you age structure diagrams from 2008, actually, for three different countries. Afghanistan on the left, the United States in the middle, and Italy on the right. And you may have heard about Italy's situation in terms of the coronavirus. And you probably haven't heard much about Afghanistan, and there is a reason for that. Not very many cases reported or very many fatalities. Of course, the United States is here in the middle, and obviously you're hearing about our coronavirus cases on a daily basis. So if you look at these three age structure diagrams, they're very different. You have a pyramid on the left, which shows a very, very young population. And of course, we have pretty significant mortality moving up and not very many people in the elderly portion of the population. The United States in the middle shows a pretty stable, slow-growing population. You still have reproduction at the bottom, slightly above replacement level fertility. And then you can see that you have this sort of bulge in the middle that's representative of the baby boom. And you can see there's a lot higher percentage in their 50s and going into their 60s. And then the diagram on the right for Italy shows not very many young people. So this is actually a no growth, and Italy is now proceeded into a negative growth population, which we'll get to in a second. But again, you can see here that not quite an inverted pyramid, but well on its way to being an inverted pyramid type structure. All right, so if we, on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about Italy and how this is relevant to coronavirus. So this slide shows Italy in 2019. Population a little over 60 million, And if you notice from compared to the last slide that showed Italy in 2008, the pyramid has inverted a little bit more. So that bulge that was in the working age, sort of the 30s and 40s, has now proceeded up into the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We see here also that Italy has a higher percentage of both males and females in the higher age categories, all the way up from 50 to 60, up into even the 80 and 90 year old categories. So compared to most other countries, again, the top of the pyramid, or the top of the age structure diagram, is expanded. And this does have consequences for what we've seen with coronavirus. And based on what you know about coronavirus, you can probably predict these. The mortality of coronavirus has been shown to be much higher in the elderly than it is in obviously the younger segments of the age structure diagram of the population. And it may not be surprising, looking at this diagram, that Italy actually has had one of the highest mortality rates and has had a lot of issues with coronavirus and its elderly population. Now, I'll see what you guys remember about how age structure diagrams affect demographics, affect the economy, and affect other socioeconomic factors of a country. So thinking about Italy, looking at this diagram, and seeing that we don't have a very large base to support a working age population, you may have already figured out that Italy has been undergoing some pretty severe economic strain in recent years, much like its neighbor Greece, whose economy collapsed about a decade ago and had to undergo some pretty strict austerity measures. And by that, I mean Social Security and other benefits had to be minimized in order to allow the economy to recover. Similar things have been going on in Italy. There's just not enough working age citizens to fully support the Social Security, the needs in terms of health care and other things of its very large elderly population. So as devastating as this disease obviously has been to Italy, and there's no getting around that this has been a very, very tragic situation. Long term, in terms of the economy of Italy, it may be surprising to hear that that this coronavirus, this disease, could actually have positive effects on Italy's economy. Of course, nobody ever wants to achieve that in this way, but again, just thinking about this strictly from the terms of age structure diagrams, economics, and epidemiology, you can see here there's a lot of interrelated factors and sometimes some surprising and unintended outcomes.